Hi everybody. So it's been a few months since we've talked about the Color Duo project, and I wanted to fill you in on where we're at and show you a few things that, so in January, I said something to the effect of, we're in the final stretches with the design of this. And a lot has happened since January, and the kind of global supply chains have certainly felt the same shock as everybody else. But also what's been going on is that the final stretches of any hardware project is a much longer process than most people would think. And so I wanted to show you a few of the things today that we've been working on that are in that kind of like final 1% of designing something, because I think they're really important and they're really what distinguishes exceptional hardware from good hardware, and they're also fun to talk about. So before going too far, I just want to say in a few weeks we will be launching a pre-order for the Color Duo. This is a big piece of hardware. We are going to need your financial support to get it going, so please keep a lookout for that. Okay, now on to the final 1%. So last we talked, I showed you the drawer. As a refresher, all the colors sit on, and all the front panel controls sit on one circuit board. All the rear panel controls and power and stuff, rear panel connectors and power sit on another circuit board. This plugs in and out of that, and you unscrew the front panel. This all pulls out. You can swap colors and plug them back in. Awesome. Great feature, but boy, did it make things hard for us in some ways. So the first way is that when you're plugging something in and out without turning off the power, which is a big goal for us, you're going to get pops. And you also run into problems sometimes with hot swapping. It can destroy active components if things don't connect at exactly the same time and stuff like that. So we had to make sure that was 100% taken care of, because if you're going to put a drawer in something, you have to have 100% confidence that you can do the drawer without making your speakers pop or breaking the thing. So what we settled on is this is really fun for me, very exciting. When you plug in the drawer without any other protection, the power and the audio would go on at the same time. So you get this big pop. What we've done is added 2 relays with timing circuitry. So basically, you plug in the drawer, and then there's this delay circuitry before the power turns on. So everything is plugged in. There's plenty of time for the pins to all connect, and then a few milliseconds later, power goes on. And that's when the pop happens, which is why there's another relay with a longer delay circuit before the audio comes on. And so you'll actually get to hear this when you plug it in. You plug it in, you hear click, and that's the actual little switch of the relay going, and then another click, and then you'll hear audio with no pops and no danger of damaging anything. So that's fun. That was, a few weeks of very heavy testing and designing, because relays are finicky and so are timing circuits and stuff. But we settled on something, I think, pretty ideal for that. And now when you pull the drawer out, you don't have the same danger of this hot swapping, and there's not usually really a pop. But just in case, we added a switch on the front panel, an active switch, so that you can press that button and then pull it out, and just make sure everything is muted. There's no danger of getting a pop in your studio monitor. So there's one little detail that you might never have known about, and that's the idea. We spent these couple months working on it so that you never are thinking oh, this thing pops. Oh, what do I have to do to make it not pop? That you should never have to think about that. Okay, the next thing is, how do you unscrew and screw in the front panel? We didn't want you to have to use a screwdriver, so that put us in the world of thumb screws, which is a very broad and exciting world that I'm learning a lot about. This is the first thumb screw we use that we showed you in the video in January. Basically, this part on the bottom gets pressed into the metal, so it's permanent. And then you just have to unscrew the thumb screw. It's held taut with a spring, and it's all captive so nothing can fall out. It's a great little thing, but it's just not nice to use. As you can see, the part that your thumb goes on is like pretty, it's not very deep. And so we went looking for something better, and we found a lot of options. And what we really liked is this style of thumb screw with a much thicker, focusing doesn't seem to be working that well, but it's just got like a much thicker thing that you actually put your thumb on, which is awesome, except they're way wider. As with most kind of mechanical parts, there's like standard parts made by a bunch of different brands, but basically all the standard ones we could find of this style were just way too wide. They were like as wide as the pots, and the balance was all off on the front panel. So we had to get a custom part, which is cool, except it takes a couple weeks of emailing back and forth to make sure you've got the drawing exactly how you want it, and then they send you a sample, and you stress test the sample, and you say, okay, and then you're good to go. So that's just kind of one of those things. It's like, well, now we have the perfect thumb screw that we love. Glad we did that. But that's a month of work right there. I mean, not exclusively, but you can't launch before you've done that month of work to find the perfect thumb screw. And similar story with knobs. I used to be, it's funny, 10 years ago I didn't care about knobs. It was like, there were plastic knobs on the first color palette. I just thought, look, if somebody wants to pay for knobs, they can choose their own fancy knobs. I've since come to feel differently about them. You know, this is a tool that's going to be sitting in your studio, and you're going to be interacting with it in hopefully your most kind of like inspired moments. It should be perfect. It should be as close to perfect as we can make it for a price that people want to pay. And knobs are a big part of that. There's no point to dismiss knobs. So anyway, this is the knob that's been on our gear for years now. It's this skirted aluminum knob. I love it. It's beautiful. But because of the skirt, the diameter was too big for every control on here to have that same knob. We also wanted to be able to distinguish between the mic preamp gain and the other knobs. So we thought, oh, let's just get a non-skirted version. What could be easier? Let's get the same exact knob and have it without the skirt. And we told the manufacturer that's what we want. And they sent us a sample, and it was like totally different. I mean, when I say totally different, it looked basically like this without a skirt, but the thickness of the line, it was like thicker. This angle of how this, miter or whatever was done was totally different, and the spacing of the knurl was different. And I was like, okay, I guess we have to be more specific. And so we went back and forth for weeks where it was like, okay, they would get the knurl right, and then the miter was wrong, or they would get, it was just unreal. And finally, a couple months later, we got a sample that's actually perfect. It is just what we asked for originally, which is that knob without the skirt. And when they're sitting side by side, I feel like it has to be that way. I'm sure if we had thrown the original one that they sent us on there, nobody would have complained. But that's a low bar. I think that people looking at it would have thought, I don't know if you even would have said, oh, so that knob is off, but the overall kind of gestalt would not have been what it should be. So yeah, there's been other stuff going on. Design-wise, we had to kind of redesign the case so that it was sturdier to handle the drawer without any give. But I won't get into all that. I just want to give you kind of a glimpse into the kind of things that you do after the design is done. None of this has anything to do with the sound or really the functionality. The muting and unmuting a little bit. It's just, if you are working on a product for 2 years and you want to be able to sell it for forever and you want people to be happy with it for decades, you just need to do these things. You need to spend a month getting the perfect thumb screws and the perfect knobs, because you're really I feel like selling the product short and just, I guess it's kind of like wasting people's time not to do it. You know, I mean, I know that people are impatient for this to come out, and I love that. I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, you know, I feel like it's got to be worth your money and your time and your studio space, and for that to be the case, every T has to be crossed and I has to be dotted. So anyhow, look out for the pre-order in a few months. Thank you so much for following along. We'll talk to you all soon. Take care.